Okay, I did a bit of research on this hub, and I was able to read the bearings on both sides and find replacements online. So we can replace these bearings, which I'll plan on doing because these are old. And I determined that I do not have to break this peening just yet. There's a central shaft assembly between the two hubs. And often when that's the case, it goes in one way and not the other. And in this case, it goes this way. So what I have is a very large socket that will fit outside the centerpiece. You can use a vise. You can use two pieces of wood, whatever's stable. I started this. I moved it just a bit in the vise to make sure that it made sense before I started breaking anything in front of you. And it moved, so that's what we're going to continue with. So what I have here, so like I said, I can tell that this piece is going to come out. That fits inside there, so it'll slide in. This is a brass drift, and this is my hammer. I'm going to gently hammer that down. And if I show you here, this piece is now sliding out. Okay? So we're going to give it. It usually doesn't take very much effort. And there it goes. So this is the center piece. This is the actual right ascension axis. And here is the hub. There's a needle bearing here. This is bearing number 1. And there's a sealed ball bearing here on this side. And neither of them feel very bad, but considering I can get them both replaced for about $6 or $7 each, I think it's worth it. As well, you can see that there's crud all on here. Now, these 2 points are the only places where the bearings sit, so that's all we need to be clean. But there's no reason for this crud to be there. And that can break loose, especially because it sits this way in the telescope. This can break loose and get down into the needle bearings on the bottom, which are all exposed, and start to grind away at them and cause issues. So there's no reason to leave this here like this. And this is one of those perfect situations for the white Scotch-Brite pad that I was talking about before. And this is 90% pure isopropyl alcohol. And alcohol is nice because it disappears after a while when you spill it. So if you squirt some on your workbench, it'll stay there for a bit, but eventually it'll evaporate. And it is very good at degreasing and cleaning things like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit it very quickly with this grade and determine what else I need. These are all, I figure whatever telescope you take apart, the condition of this is going to be different for each one. So we can already see there's rust collecting there on, in my little puddle. But I can tell from this one there's a bit of gouging and a bit more rust. And this one is not going to do the trick. So there's the rust coming off of it. So I mentioned the green Scotch-Brite pad before. So let's go and get ourselves a hunk of green Scotch-Brite pad to work with. Of course, if you don't know already, you can cut these apart with a razor blade, and it makes them easier to deal with. So let's take our Scotch-Brite pad and put some alcohol on there and go to town. And if this doesn't work, I have even more aggressive things we can use. So right now I am just going around and scrubbing it pretty hard. Let's get ourselves a wipe. see where we stand. This is already significantly better, okay? But this is all still pitted. This is rust pits. The kind of loose junk that was on there is gone. I'll get this. I'll work on it one more minute, and we'll see what we can get. The next step after this is going to be sandpaper. Actually, the next step after this is going to be this. Zoom out so you can see this technique. It's a very important technique. Scotch-Brite pad, and you just go to town on it. Pressure and heat and speed. So I think that we'll be okay with this. I mean, there's some pitting, but that's not a big deal. There's no more loose rust or scale that's going to break off and go into the needle bearings. I'm not worried about the pitting. What we can do is we can sit here with our white pad and polish it up just a little bit, because the green pad makes it pretty brushed. So this will just smooth it out a little bit. It's like a very fine grit sandpaper or steel wool. So it's just going to bring some of the shine back to it. But since this section here doesn't touch anything, it's only down here and here that touch the bearings. This section doesn't touch anything. So it doesn't have to be smooth, it just has to be clean. And now this is really, even this discoloration, I thought it was pits, but when I run my nail on it, it doesn't catch. So I think it's just surface discoloration, maybe just a little bit of pitting, but I think that's pretty good there. I think that's clean. While we're here, let me show you another trick. Since we've gone this far to clean, we should continue. Sop up your alcohol that's dripping everywhere. And this is a little, kind of like a Q-tip, but it's actually a little microfiber cloth on the tip there. And these are real good for getting in and cleaning screw threads. So I'll clean some of the gunk out of there, come over here, clean this one here. I'll see that one nice and dirty. Yeah, so get in there and just run around the screw threads just to clean them off. There's no reason, you shouldn't have any problems with this, but if you had any difficulty getting it apart, there might have been rust in these threads, and this will help clean some of that up and just make it easier. Okay, there's that. And then the last thing we're going to do, since we kind of made a mess of the whole thing, we're going to take one of these wipes and get a nice padded part. This was a trick we used when we were cleaning technical equipment. And just get it wet with your alcohol, and you can just go around one more time, kind of clean things up, clean up the surfaces here where the bearing's going to be, clean that all around there. And all we're doing now is getting rid of all the fingerprints that I put on here. It's a little yellow, I don't know if you can really tell, but that's all just grease from fingerprints and things like that. Now what you'll notice is what I didn't have to clean up was any actual grease on here, which was a little disturbing because this is the axis and there are bearings, and so there should have been some sort of lubrication in this whole assembly. So I'm going to replace these bearings. I'll order them and replace them over the next week. But I'm going to show you a trick. How do you get these? Oh, look at that. Aha, there's something in there. So how do you get these out? And that's the trick. So this big bearing is called a needle bearing. Okay, and so it's got a bunch of thin needles. Let's see if the camera can pick this up at all. So these are needles in there. They're called needles, but they're basically just tubes. Instead of ball bearings, they're tube bearings. And they sit there, and the housing is very, very thin. Okay, so I might be able to get away with that here. Let's see. So the way you do this is you have, of course, the right equipment for the job. So in the same way that we knocked the main axis out, you can take those bearings and knock them out. And so there's going to be a little lip on the edge, and you take your small drift and you catch the edge, and this can be real difficult to do. You got to be real careful. And you just tap that edge, and you try to find the other edge. So I'm going to work on this a bit and see if I can get these out, and we will come back shortly.